Thank you. I've never done it this long. It's always been 3 times, now it's 4. It'll be 18 by the end of this decade, the way I'm going. What I want to do now is just look in this section at where we are now and how it plays out in this 5-sense reality. We've come down, the levels now plays out here. Manipulation of 5-sense reality. And what I call the coordinates. Because once we realize basic coordinates of where they want to take the world and the methods they use to take us there, suddenly what seems to be a bewildered world and what's going on, it just morphs into clarity. The question is, how do they do it? It's a good question because at first sight, how do a few control the many? Impossible, but it's not because of the way they've structured society. Just to very quickly recap, they want to lock humanity in the 5 senses so we don't perceive beyond it. We're locked in that prison. They have interbreeding bloodlines, computer terminals, I would call them, which play out this interdimensional conspiracy within visible light, what I call the Illuminati bloodlines. And they've set up a structure whereby the bloodlines who answer to the reptilian control system then control the governments, the people in power in all the various institutions. And crucial all the way through is to structure society. I mean, you can symbolize it as a spider's web or like this as a pyramid. The idea is to hoard advanced knowledge, the kind of stuff we've been hearing about today and more, in the upper levels of this structure, this pyramid within pyramid structure, compartmentalized pyramid, where the few at the top are the only ones that know how it all fits together. And they keep the general population in ignorance of what they know, therefore they have the power, so they can manipulate the perception of the masses by keeping them in ignorance. This is why the education system is not about educating, it's about programming. And they place their people in so-called power, what we are told is at the top of the pyramid of power, presidents, prime ministers, and all these people, in the upper echelons of the pyramid, but nowhere near the top. The real people in power are behind them, in the shadows, and these are the conduits, the presidents, the prime ministers, and all the rest of it, for bringing that agenda into the public arena as changes in laws and legislations and the structure of society. So they compartmentalize all these different pyramids within pyramids, so that in the end, the banking system is encompassed by a pyramid. I mean, a bank's a pyramid in itself, all hierarchical pyramids, but then the banking system is encompassed by a pyramid, and at the top of that are the same families, most notably the Rothschilds. Same with the businesses. The transnational corporations are compartmentalized pyramids in and of themselves, but they go into a bigger pyramid which encompasses all the transnational corporations. So at that point, they are one corporation, just as at that point, all those banks are one bank. Same with politics, education, all these things. And people in this part of the pyramid here, they go to work, they're not trying to manipulate anybody, they're not trying to create a fascist Orwellian agenda and global state. They just want to go about their careers, earn money, go on holiday, provide for their families. But they don't know how their apparently innocent contribution individually connects with other apparently innocent contributions around the system. When you connect them together, you see it's anything but an innocent direction that it's taking the world. And that's how they keep what's going on in the hands of the few. This is Neil Haig's representation of that. This is the general population, and these are the kind of dark-suit administrators of the system until you get up here to where the control system is. And most even here won't know that exists. Oh, I've just got this order from on high, I don't know where it's come from. Well, maybe we ought to bloody ask, instead of just doing it. And again, it can also be symbolized as the web, where these various strands, they're secret societies, semi-secret organizations, which go out and connect all these apparently unconnected countries, institutions, media organizations, banks, etc. And this Illuminati network, symbolized as the bearded man, spews out all these people who apparently appear to be random. To run for president needs cuckoo land amounts of money. Where do they come from? It comes from here. Where does that money come from? And therefore, you have two people put up for president who are there because of the money provided by this network. Therefore, they've chosen not only who it's going to be, but they've sorted out what the policies are going to be in return for that money. And this is what they do. We think we're choosing our leaders. We're not. It's a myth. And so this structure that I showed you earlier comes into this, where these leaders are put into power to carry out the agenda of the control system, which is why when parties change, whatever they've said in opposition goes out the window and they start acting like the party in government previously that they were criticizing. The common denominator is whoever gets in power basically introduces the control system, and whoever's out of power opposes the control system verbally, which means that you have the illusion of choice when whoever's in power unfolds the agenda. So there is no choice. It's a myth. And they control these institutions and play the people off against each other, divide and rule, both within countries and between countries, keeping everything in a constant state of confusion and conflict. And that's the key. Manipulating confusion and conflict is child's play. Manipulating harmony, manipulating respect between each other is a nightmare. So they have to keep the world in constant states of conflict. Now, when you bring it down to an individual country, as we come down this structure, this is what you find in every country. You had in America, it's a wonderful example, but it plays out all over the world. During the Bush years, Republican, that administration was controlled by a group of people known as neocons, neoconservatives, including all these people like Richard Pearl and all the rest of it. And over here, you have what I call, anyway, the democons. This is a network of people. I put Kissinger in the democons because he's an advisor to Obama at the moment, but he spends most of his time with the neocons, Kissinger. He just goes with whoever's winning. And the democons are a group of people that control the democratic administrations. But the democons and the neocons are controlled by the same force once you get to here. So people think, oh, I voted Republican this time. Oh, I'm going to put the Democrats in because I like that Obama. Got a nice smile. And what you're doing is voting for this, whatever. And that's what's happening in this country. Same thing. And so when people say Big Brother Bush or Big Brother Obama, no, it's not. These are just puppets. Dance. I said dance. When I say jump, I mean Olympic high jump record. This is the thing. You take one mask off, you put another mask on. And because it's a different mask, we think it's a different administration. We think controlled by different forces. No, no. And what you have is the movie playing out in the public arena, people who appear to be in opposition to each other when they're controlled by the same puppeteer. And once you look beyond the movie, that's when you start to see what's really happening in the world. So the cards are moved around in line with an agenda for the constant, incessant centralization of power. And it's done with people who, I keep coming back to, have a DNA with empathy deleted, which means anything goes in pursuit of this agenda. And the people are misdirected, diverted by the way society is manipulated and controlled, increasingly so, with more and more laws affecting the fine detail of our lives, so that we spend so much time surviving and rushing around, we don't lift our head up and see what's going on. So puppet people are essential to the few controlling the world. And when we cease to be so, and it's happening more and more, then this will be over. Humans have been put into this round and round and round circular lifestyle where 1 week leads into another week and another week, just a repeating cycle of action and work and sleep and eat and work and sleep and eat for so many people. And this is the structure that they're moving towards. Why? Because when you're the few and you want to control the many, you have to centralize decision-making. The more diversity of decision-making there is, the less control any central point is going to have over it. So what you need to do is constantly centralize power, so control over more and more and more people goes into fewer and fewer hands. We started with a tribal situation a long time ago. The people in the tribe decided what was going to happen. We then brought, as part of this centralization, it's gone over at this whole period I'm talking about, the tribes came together into what we call nations. And now, a few people at the center of the nation are dictating to all the former tribes that make up that nation. We're now well into the next stage of that, which is bringing nations together under unions like the European Union, so a few people at the center are now dictating to all those nations, which are made up of all those tribes before. And the next stage of that, which they're already preparing for, is to take us into a world government that would dictate to these unions that are building up, like the European Union, the American Union that they want via the North American Union, the Pacific Union, evolved out of organizations like APEC, Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, and the African Union, already in place, evolved out of the Organization of African Unity and other bodies. And what they done in many of these unions is start them off as free trade zones, just for jobs, that's all it is, no worries. And then they've turned them into fully fledged dictatorships, which is what happened in the European Union. And the reason is that you've got to centralize power if you want to get more and more control in the hands of the few over more and more people. Totalitarian tiptoe, as I call it, goes in conjunction with problem, reaction, solution. This is real simple. You start at A, you know you're going to Z, but you know if you go in a big leap, the change is going to be so big and so quick that people are going to go, what's happening, what's happening? Turn that television show off, what's happening? And so you go in steps, as big as you can get away with, but not so big that you get too much of a reaction. And as this quite rightly said, you really think it would be this obvious. Well, it's becoming that obvious now as we move along, but up to this point it hasn't been, unless you looked for it. The European Union was turned from a free trade zone, nothing to worry about, just for jobs, into what it is now, a centralized dictatorship, through the totalitarian tiptoe. And here is the founding father of the EU, as they call him, Jean Monnet, a Rothschild frontman. Europe's nations should be guided towards the superstate without their people understanding what is happening. This can be accomplished by successive steps, each disguised as having an economic purpose, but which will eventually and irreversibly lead to federation. And the word fascism, which comes from this symbol, the fasci from the Roman Empire, is individuality tied together and ruled by the accent. The central point, European Union, precisely described. Globalization, which is the constant centralization of power, which is more and more power in the hands of fewer and fewer over more and more people. This is a totalitarian tiptoe. More and more, the globalized economy is taking over, so that every country is dependent on every other country, therefore has no power of individual action and individual decision-making. Free trade, which means freedom to exploit, which means you can get sweatshop workers here to make your stuff for a few cents, and then you ship it over here and you sell it for as much as you can get. It's called free trade. Everyone's in favor of free trade. You can't be against free trade. This is also part of this globalized centralization of power, which is designed to do this, and it increasingly is doing this. It means that if you're dependent within your country or your community on things outside of your influence, then everyone is dependent on everyone else, therefore has no self-sufficient ability to make decisions in their own lives and their own communities and their own countries. And the reason that they want to do this is they want to make everyone dependent on something outside their control, because dependency equals control. It's like abundance and scarcity. We live in a world which could be incredibly abundant. Nobody should be hungry on this planet, for goodness sake. Africa can feed the bloody world. It can't even feed itself. Why? Because of the manipulation of that continent by this crowd. And so we have all over the world, because there's no empathy, no consequences for them emotionally of their actions, we have manufactured scarcity. Because abundance equals choice equals freedom. Scarcity equals dependency equals control. And that's why we have manufactured dependency. We have people hungry in a world of plenty. Coordinate 3, the cement. There are certain organizations, networks, rings, that act as the cement that holds the web together and holds people within the web together. Close to the spider people are the Rothschilds. And when I talk about the Rothschilds, one thing, I'm not talking about all people called Rothschild. The vast majority of people called Rothschild won't have a clue what other Rothschilds in that dynasty are doing. And secondly, I don't even mean only people called Rothschild. I mean the Rothschild bloodline, which has infiltrated many other enormous numbers of other families and groups, which then come to power under other names other than Rothschild. Because if the president's Rothschild, a bloody guy here is Rothschild, a bloody newsreader's Rothschild. What's going on? Instead of that, you have people under different names. So I'm talking about the Rothschild bloodline and the scions of that family, the people that run that family. Not everyone called Rothschilds. A lot of people in that family called Rothschild who don't have a clue what's going on. But they, through these various cements, control all these different and various apparently unconnected organizations. Now, one of the cements, of course, is the secret society network. That's pretty obvious when you look at it. And these are some of the major ones, but there are even more exclusive ones as well that operate in tiny, tiny cabals. But it's not just the secret society networks. They connect into the satanic networks, where they literally carry out human sacrifice and such horrors, which these bloodlines have been doing all the way through. Now, no one has a problem with the fact that then primitive ancients used to sacrifice people and torture people and all that stuff, but that was at one time kind of acceptable because it was the way they did things. As it's become unacceptable, it's still gone on, same bloodlines involved, but it goes on secretly, obviously. And this is the paedophile rings, the sexual child abuse rings, which connect into that and connect into that. That's not saying everyone in the secret society is a paedophile. It's not saying every Satanist is a paedophile. It's not saying every paedophile is a Satanist from every secret society. But there are rings, connections between these organizations and groups that hold them together. It's a bit like the Olympic rings. They connect into each other. And you find, this is why, as I researched this over these last 20 years, when I have researched through people in power like politicians and bankers and even some media people and stuff like that, you know, after this time of researching this and the recurring themes, that when you get far enough into it, you're going to come across a secret society, but you're almost certainly going to come across either or both Satanism and child abuse, sexual abuse, paedophilia. And there's a reason why the ratio of such people is massive in the upper echelons of this control structure than it is in the general population. There's a blueprint which you find in every community and every country. It's a blueprint of how this works and how the Satanists and the pedophiles and the secret society people end up in positions of power and influence to direct this conspiracy. So the pedophilia and the secret societies and the Satanists operating in these interconnecting rings then infiltrate their people right across the web, which holds the whole thing together. Now, Satanism is staggeringly common compared with the public perception of it. And there's a number of reasons for it. First of all, they're sacrificing people literally to the gods, the serpent gods. When you see these ancient accounts all over the world of how they used to sacrifice people, young virgins often, and what does young virgins code for? Children, to the gods, because they put them through the sacrifice ritual and they build up the terror. What happens is the terror reaches a point where a certain adrenaline pours into the blood and the people doing the ritual then drink that blood and they get a real high from that adrenaline. But as the sacrifice is going on, the victim is also releasing energy, very powerful, low vibrational energy, and the entities, or entity, whatever it is, just outside of visible light is feeding off that energy. They're feeding off us like vampires in so many ways, and that's one of them, and one of the reasons for these sacrifices of people to the gods. The other thing is that and I've talked to Satanists who've seen this happen, or former Satanists around the world, they create an energetic environment which is almost a stepping stone, like halfway house, which allows these entities to come in to the ritual. I've talked to people who've seen these entities manifest in the rituals because of the way they have created the energetic environment. Anyone who's looked even mildly at this whole conspiracy in this area will know about Bohemian Grove in Northern California, where the elite, the presidents, the Bushes, the Kissingers, the Rockefellers, all these people go and take part in rituals under a 40-foot stone owl. And from what I am told by people who've been there in a victim state, they, in smaller groups, because it's 2,700 acres of redwood forest, actually do sacrifices there too. And all these people are involved with their satanic gods and all the rest of it.